this whole being married is it's constant negotiation. It's constant listening. It's not constant, but it's like it's weekly. It's not necessarily even daily, but at least weekly of listening and with the right spirit of really understanding and maybe bringing a new way to think about something. Because, you know, when you come together with 2 or 3 people in the spirit of God, God is there. So it probably is going to bring something that's worthwhile to your relationship.
The whole world is sick.
Are you worried about America? I am.
Believe the impossible and you can do the incredible.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Catholic Patriot. And once again, I am very blessed to be joined by Tammy Peterson. The last time we spoke, she was just probably less than 2 months out from joining the Catholic Church. And now she is within the family. And what a joy it's been. It's been, I guess, almost 5.5 months since, was it March 31st? So, Tammy, welcome back. It's great. It's a great joy to have you.
Thank you very much. And you're right. I do feel like I belong to the Catholic family more than I ever. You know, I was a child, I guess, when I was in the Protestant church, but the welcoming has been overwhelming, really.
Oh, that's great. I was going to ask you that just to kind of warm into our conversation is what has it been like? I mean, what has changed in your life since becoming Catholic? And of course, receiving the Eucharist and all of these things. But what has life been like since, if you could summarize it?
Can you still see me?
No, I can't, but I can hear you.
Oh, rats. I wanted to just look up. I wrote down some
That's okay.
things that had changed for me. Here we go.
Sure.
30 virtues that have changed for me. Jordan and I discussed it. He says I'm more like I was as a little kid, and he would know because he met me when I was 8 years old. I'm more playful. I'm less cynical, less volatile, less concerned with control and power, more patient, more loving, more centered on the well-being of others, more hospitable, more obedient, more in the moment, more beautiful, warmer, more discriminating, more elegant, more composed, more resilient, more graceful, more socially appropriate, better as a mother, easier to negotiate with, more willing to listen and speak, on target with words, deeper thinking, more creative, easier to work with, better boss, sexier, more trust in a courageous way, more courageous in a trusting way, and more self-reflective.
Wow, that sounds like there's been
Oh, look at that, I'm gone.
Yeah, just a little influence, I think, since you become Catholic. That's
Yes, that's
my
right.
goodness, what an examination that is, and that's coming from Jordan.
Well, it's a
Or is it
conversation between him and I.
okay? Because that's an extensive list. It's like when you examine your conscience very, very carefully, you begin to see all those things and where you're lacking, and now you see now the filling up. I mean, that's extraordinary. These aren't minor. This is a total, I would say almost like a transfiguration in so many places. So that's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, What about on the side of have there been any new challenges that you might not have
Oh, yeah.
that you haven't anticipated that you're now, but yeah, it sounds like with all of these, you sound very equipped to deal with them. But what would they be?
What would they be? Well, Jordan invited me to go on stage with him on his tour.
Hmm.
He was speaking to thousands of people a night, and he invited me to go on stage with him. And when I was ill, I asked God that if he would allow me to live, that I promised I would speak publicly. And so when Jordan asked me that, I said yes. I don't think I would have said yes before.
Mm.
And so I've really learned to speak. Now, he'll tell me an hour before the show what he's going to speak about, and I have to figure out what I'm going to say on stage. And now I just jot a few notes, and I go out with no notes, and I just talk about what it is that I want to say. And when I first started doing it, I thought about it all day long usually, and wrote very extensively through the day before I could kind of figure out what I was going to say.
Mm.
But I've also learned when you write, you just start writing. You might not be making any sense, but you just start writing, and eventually what it is that's your question, you'll start to get the answer when you're writing it down, and then you can take, like they say, you can take what you have learned and leave the rest. And so I've really learned how to do that in a way that I'd never learned before. So that's one thing. I speak to many different people on my podcast, mostly, that I never would have had the courage to ask before. And I wouldn't have had the courage to have a conversation with many of them because I admire many of these people, and I think, why would they want to speak to me? But I realize now that I don't really have to know anything. All I have to do is listen and ask questions. And I think I'm I can do that. I can do that. So I have, and before I go on stage, always with George, I ask for courage and strength, and I ask for guidance to say something that's meaningful to someone, so it can be helpful. And so I really try on the podcast and on stage to be careful with what I say, and hopefully in letting the words come up the way they do, to be that it ends up being something that somebody can hear and say, oh yeah, right, that makes sense.
Mm. Well, it sounds
So that's
very,
mostly,
yeah.
writing, thinking, and speaking. Yeah.
Well, that's extraordinary. I want to jump into that in just a minute, as far as like when you were talking about your podcast, but it is interesting because doing some of those things myself, and I'm a perfectionist. It's one of the worst vices I'm finding, is just because it's paralyzing, and it puts so much, at least for me as a perfectionist, it's like the power and the control's mine. And sometimes people have said that the things that I've shared that were the best, if you want to call it that, was literally when I was caught off guard. I didn't have much time, and it's like, just go. And I say a quick prayer, and then it's like scripture. Don't worry about what you're to say. The Holy Spirit will give you the right words. That's usually in times of persecution, but it almost feels like that when you're thrown on to something. So that's a beautiful testament, though, as far as, God really does work, and He just wants us to show up. And so that I think that's a huge blessing. In your podcast, I was just revisiting it because I wanted to see your little description. Because I'm like, how do I summarize what Tammy's doing? I know, kind of, generally, you stepped into, well, in a very major way, but like, I didn't know how to describe it, the feminine world. And we're in a cultural war, we're in a crisis. The good thing, and the blessing it is having you as a guest too, that I appreciate, is that you're fully awake of what is going on, which is sometimes 70% of the battle, because you need a context within which you're working. You need to know the war you're in, or even know that you're in a war, so you react that way. But I've looked at your podcasts and reels and the guests that you have on. I'm like, okay, World Economic Forum, Great Reset. Like, she knows what's going on, but that's so important. So then when I look at your podcast, it says my podcast focuses on the divine feminine, the dark and the light side of womanhood, practically and symbolically. And your guest, you discuss motherhood, marriage, family, the issues facing boys and men in a feminist world, education, gender, environmental hysteria, postmodern philosophy, and health. I was like, oh my gosh, this is this is so wide. But what a niche to be called to be in, because you and I, we both have a great love for Fulton Sheen, and you told me that in preparation for our conversation, where is it? You read The World's First Love,
I
and so
did, yeah.
so I went back through it as well, and at the very heart of what he says in this entire book is how the restoration ultimately of the world is going to come through Mary.
Hmm.
And when you had that phrase, the divine, was it the divine feminine? I wonder if I could find it really, really fast, because then I was just going back. I'm like, oh my gosh, he almost uses that exact phrase. He talks about the eternal feminine.
Mm.
Um, when he's talking about the number one crisis of today, he says the major problem of the world is the restoration of the image of man. And so I'm really curious how, if you could give us your insights on what you've been focusing on most, what you've kind of been zeroing in on in light of this one passage of Sheen where he says, the level of any civilization is the level of its womanhood. What could you tell us about that from all of what you've been reflecting on?
Sure. Well, when I started the podcast, I was investigating the Rosary at the very beginning. But then when I thought deeper about it, I thought, oh, if I'm going to be investigating the divine feminine, then what does it mean in its entirety? And that took me to things I didn't want to look at. That took me to child trafficking. That took me anything to do with children, pedophilia, terrible, terrible things that I didn't want to look at. But I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I guess I better do this. So I started inviting guests who had been, trying to help in those places. And I guess through all the podcasts, I've got an education. And I think that is what happens when we're on our podcast. We're learning, right? That I was learning. I was learning all about what it means to be fully a woman. And so most recently I've been thinking about, I guess, identity, but I've been thinking about what it means to be an individual. And we've been talking a lot about what is a woman, this year, it seems, and people were confused, or it gave them pause when they were asked that question. And I think a woman is a girl with a baby. That's a woman. A woman has a baby, because that is when something becomes more important than us, then we really have matured.
Mm.
And in our society, we've been told through the feminist narrative and for many generations now that career was going to be the most important thing in our lives. And if you talk to enough women, you'll find out that it's not true. That what really is meaningful is family. That bond between mother and child is the most important relationship a woman will have. Now, a man, and we've been talking about our men and how men have become I think, less motivated. Well, why are men motivated to do difficult things and sometimes dangerous things? Because they have to support their wife, who's the mother of their children. That's going to give them the motivation to go and do things that they wouldn't do necessarily. They might just go down and play video games instead, but they're not going to do that when they have a wife and a baby to take care of. When I married my husband, he was right away, he was like, oh, I don't know that if I'm if I'm yet the provider that you need, you know? So it gave him pause. Even when I just said I was ready to have children, it took him a while to wrap his head around that, to see if it was reasonable for him to accept that this was our destiny right now. Was he ready? And he was thinking, am I ready to support my wife and my baby? And he thought, do I have to take care of the baby? So he came back and he asked me. He said, do I have to take care of the baby? I don't think that I can take care of a baby. You know, I'm very busy at work and I don't think that I have that time. I said, no, you don't have to take care of the baby. I'm going to take care of the baby. I want to have a baby and I'm going to take care of the baby. And so he said, okay, well, then I'll take care of you. And I said, that's a deal. Let's do it. And so then we started a family. But that's a mature man, and that's a mature girl, is a girl with a baby. She's
Hmm.
grown up. She's become a woman. And I don't know how old the Virgin Mary was. Do you know how old she was? Does anybody know how old she was?
Yeah, she was, well, I mean, I don't know if it was exact, but basically about 15-ish.
Yeah, right. I think my
Oh,
grandmother was 15 too.
yeah.
So we wait way too long now to have children. You know, we keep kids in school sometimes till they're 25, you know, and you might find a marriage partner in university. In fact, that might be what university is for. We don't know. But, right? Because lots
Expensive
of
way to
us have
find your spouse.
very expensive these days, isn't it?
They call it the
And
MRS degree.
yes, right. And they have for a very long time. And it's funny and everything, but there's a grain of truth in it.
Hmm.
So, you know, if it was me doing this again, I was really ready to have a family much earlier than 26. By the time I was 26, I was definitely ready to have children. But I think I was ready earlier in my 20s. So I think, you know, we lead people astray in thinking that they can put it off. Women have to be educated. There's no doubt about it. You know, feminism did a good job of getting women access to education and work. There's no doubt about it. But things have gone too far because women have left their families and have left their communities. And so now the children are left to the state, and men don't have a calling anymore. And I think it's up to women. I think it's up to us to recognize that we were in a very important position. We had very important responsibilities. Maybe we thought they weren't that important, but they are. You can just see that because the birth rate has fallen. The romance is not happening with young people. No longer are people getting married as often, and communities. I guess they used to be. They used to have the church at the middle of them, and people stopped going to church, and then women left the home, and then the community isn't minding one another. We're not minding one another. You know, when your neighbor is in trouble, you kind of have to see them once a week to know if something's up. And so how are we going to take care of each other in this world? We actually have to take care of each other right at home and in our communities, because that's where the nurturing happens.
Hmm. Yeah, it's exact. As you're talking, I started flipping through the world's first love. You're talking exactly what Fulton Sheen was mentioning. He says there's been such a misunderstanding of that modern feminism has introduced, which really stems from the communist ideology, which he said, you know, the two great mistakes of or the errors of communism, and what he called historical liberalism, is that women were never emancipated until modern times, since religion particularly kept them in servitude, and that equality means the right of a woman to do a man's work. In other words, so you remove religion, and then which was repressing women, and then that's going to start opening doors for them. When the history is the complete opposite, it was up to that time, and I didn't even know the details. He was talking about how in the medieval times and the Renaissance times, the amount how women were as educated as men. They had guilds dedicated just to women. They were mixed guilds. He says they were so enmeshed in society and so respected. It's like, so as Christendom collapsed, and which has been the intentions really since like the French Revolution probably onward, has been the dismantling of that. We've seen all of that come down to the point where man and woman are just material tools, and now we're picking up the pieces on, like you're saying, in marriage, children, family life, and then of course even the question, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Yeah, with all that you have been not just reflecting on, um, what piece have you found to be the most important to that we should be focusing on? Is it that marriage piece and the youthfulness? I did listen to a clip that you had on a reel, giving some statistics about women, I guess, who are not, if they're not married by a certain point. You can remind me of what it is
It's
that.
about if women by age 30, if women haven't had a baby by then a percentage of them, what was it? It was something like 30% of them will never have children.
That's
And 90 or more, 90 or 95% of them will be that will be catastrophic for them. So it wasn't their plan.
mm,
And so that's not good. That's not
no,
good. That means that they've been misled. Not
yeah,
everybody, but virtually everyone who doesn't have a baby by then will be disappointed.
mm,
Now, there are other ways. So you don't get to have a baby. And I've been thinking about this. What do you do? Well, there's adoption.
hmm
Like there are children out there in foster care that need a home. Jordan invited me to come onto his podcast because he was going to interview a pastor and his wife. So he thought that it was reasonable for me to come. And so when we got there, we were interviewing the pastor and his wife and the writer from Angel Studios' The Sound of Hope. So it's a new film.
hmm
And they described how when the pastor's wife's mother passed away, she had something like 18 children.
mm,
And this woman really admired her mother because she said she never complained. She just did her work and raised her kids and was very a good mother. And so when she died, she said that when she was alone, she was very depressed. When she was with people, she seemed to be okay, but she just couldn't get it together when she was alone. And one day, after months of this, she was really feeling low and feeling like maybe she didn't have the will to go on. And she went out onto the porch and she was thinking about this, and she heard God say, "What about all the other children who don't have a mother like your mother?" And she thought, "Oh, yes," she said, "I have to adopt a
mm.
child." And she already had one or two at that point. One of them was a special needs child, so she and her husband were already up to their neck in childcare. But she went there with her sister, and they took a course in adoption, and her sister was the first one to adopt a child, and then she adopted two children, and pretty soon the pastor himself started talking about it in church, and in the end there were 22 parishioners from this church, and they adopted 77 children. They adopted all the children in a 100-mile radius of their church.
Oh my goodness.
And so this is a message to all churches that it turns out that if one child was adopted for each church in America, there wouldn't be any kids in foster care.
Wow.
And so there's work to be done there. There's work to be done, and the church, right? The church is the container. And the church has been known to be Mary's place. And it is the place of the people. It's the place of the community, of the people who are willing to come and bend down to the Lord And so these are people who are willing to listen and to do what is the next right thing. And so those are the people that you want to answer to the community's needs. And I can't remember what the question was because we dropped the call for a second now. I can't
Well, it was
remember
original. We
what
were
the
talking
question was.
about, yeah, no, I had asked you about your recent reel where you're talking about one of the crises that women are finding now when they reach the age of 30, the chances of them then having,
Ah,
children after that goes really, really low. And
right.
and I remember Fulton Sheen talking about that. He said maybe it was the number one thing for a woman that hurt her the most, or was the greatest fear, maybe is the inability to have a child, because it is the most connatural thing to them. And there was something that I'm so glad that you mentioned that you had read through World's First Love before this, just because it made me go back, and I was led to these passages where it's exactly what you're saying, and he describes it beautifully. And he was talking about how um, he says the very emergence of woman into the political, economic, and social life of the world suggests that the world needs a continuity that she alone can supply. Like you were talking about, even with the church. For while man is more closely related to things, she is the protector and defender of life. She cannot look at a limping dog, a flower overhanging a vase, without her heart and mind and soul going out to it. And he goes on, he says, her very body commits her to the drama of existence and links her in some way with the rhythm of the cosmos. In her arms, life takes its first breath, and in her arms, life wants to die. The word most often used by soldiers on dying on a battlefield is mother. It's just,
Yes, I remember reading that.
yeah. And now what we were saying, though, talking about the eternal feminine, that's a really, I think, great, fascinating insight of the responsibility the church has in its members to embody that with life around. I never would have really made that um, call of responsibility with the connection with adoption like that, because that's, just makes me pause.
Well, the other thing I wanted to say about women is, there's lots of ways to put your mothering instinct into gear.
Mhm.
And we can do that by mentoring young people. We can do that in our workplace for sure. But I think that it's a mistake to think that children aren't going to be a part of that.
Mhm.
And it might not be your own children, it might be your siblings' children. You might be a godmother, but you also, um, as you get older, as I get older, and I've had my children, as I get older, I want to mentor young women. Queenie Yu came to me in the hospital and introduced me to the Rosary, and she invited me to Kintore College at University of Toronto, where they have a dorm where international girls stay, and it's a family. They eat together. Uh, they have different jobs. The girls, they'll be answering the door or preparing a birthday card for one of the other girls, or it's a home. It's a home for these girls who've come from far away. And although it's a Catholic dorm, not everybody has to be Catholic who goes there. And so it gives these young women a place to be. And I went there, and I've spoken there quite a few times because, in part, I wanted to see what I could do to heal my relationship with my younger self.
Mm.
And I think that doing service to young women is a way that I can heal my relationship with my younger self. And so it's been good for me to do that. And hopefully it's been good for them because that was the purpose.
Mm.
And so there are different ways. There are different ways to have to fulfill your mother role. And I think there's grandmother roles for women who have never had children. There's grandmother roles that they may end up marrying marrying a man who has children, and then there you are, a mother and then a grandmother. So there's different ways to come to it. It's most it's most likely that it'll be fulfilling when you do it yourself, but there's other ways. You always have to have an ideal, and the ideal is to marry a man and to have children. That's ideal, to do that when you're young, to have a number of kids, and to have a full life that way. But you always have to have tolerance for all the people who are going to fall outside that ideal. And there's many of them these days, like more than we want to have. There's many 40-year-old women now who don't have children. And that can be a terrible disappointment. But I think you have to look inside yourself and say, now what way can I serve? What way can I serve that younger me that didn't have any kids, wasn't able to have children? And to find a community that you can be of service to heal and to serve.
Tammy, do you do a lot of personal counseling with the women? I know you'll give talks in places. Are you sought out for counseling as well?
Some.
Okay.
I guess mostly people ask me to pray for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I hear their stories that way.
Okay. What has been the greatest regret that you hear from women today? It doesn't necessarily have to be older. It can be, younger, but when they're asking you to pray, and what is it that seems to stand out the most, that they're wounded with the most?
I guess I have men that reach out to me as well.
That was
Often
my next
it's
question.
their worry for their children.
Mm,
Maybe they have an autistic child, or I've had a young woman who was a singer and she was in an accident and she's afraid she'll never sing again, and so I can pray for her. Some of this culture war, people are reaching out to me because they feel like they're under the gun at work, and they're having to have courage and find courage and strength to deal
mm,
with the challenges that come in this climate of this cancel climate.
mm.
So all kinds of things, domestic and career problems. So I wouldn't say it's an overwhelming. There's no overwhelming theme so far.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm early in the journey.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that, um, especially when you read somebody like Fulton Sheen, who had his hand and finger really on the pulse of culture, not just then, but where we are now. Everything does point back in the restoration of man to the restoration, first and foremost, of womanhood, because it is through women that everything happens. It was through, like you talk about, even in the incarnation, when God first redeemed the world, it happened through her. And now, when the world needs to be remade again, it needs to come through woman again. And in particular, he points to our Blessed Mother. And that's why, this subject was important for me to speak with you too, because in this month of August that we're in, you have the Assumption of our Blessed Mother coming up this week, and then we have just a week later the Queenship of Mary, and and he points to the one of the big points of in restoring man, but man and woman, is purity, which is what we focus on, the Assumption. And because without that, we can't see God. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. And how the devil has gone in to just find any way to, make us impure. What thoughts do you have on that, and in communicating that? I would think, especially not just like you said to women, but to men. This issue of purity, is this something that comes up more in what you're talking about, or maybe when you're talking with Jordan? Is this because it's such a cultural thing? Beauty, all of those things tie into that. It's like our ability to see God. I'm interested to know your thoughts on that.
Well, when I start the day, I pray the rosary. And I pray the rosary, at least in part, so that anything that might be on my mind, I can give to God during my prayer. And that way, when I'm done my prayers, I can be ready and present without other concerns clouding my sight, to see what's in front of me and make the next right step. And that way you know that you're, or at least you're more likely to be answering to God's will as it presents itself in your day, in everybody's day. And so I would say that for men and women, that I have found it really, really helpful. And I meditated for years before I started to pray. So for me, practicing prayer every day came quite naturally. So I got into it very fast. But I would say if there's something that you practice in the morning, it's probably getting your coffee, because a lot of people drink coffee and they drink it right in the morning. It would be good to partner prayer with a morning practice that you already have in place, and 5 minutes right in the morning to pray, and see where that takes you. And if we were talking about writing the other night, we were talking about the people in history like C.S. Lewis who wrote every day, and sometimes what he wrote, he didn't think much of it, but he still wrote every day, or he wouldn't have much to offer, but now and then something would come out and it would be exactly what was called for. But until you have that practice where you're, and that's the thing with the rosary, I pray it every day, but now and then I really need to pray it. I really need it that morning because someone has reached out to me that needs the prayers, or I'm facing something in my own life that I really need to address, and I don't know how to address it on my own. I have to ask for God's will so that I have a better chance of making the right decision when it appears to me. And it's helped me be less anxious about it, because I'm not there all by myself anymore. I'm there with guidance. I'm there with guidance, and guidance from someone who is greater than me. So I can rest assured that if I have that focus, that I'm getting a message from God. Now, it's possible that you get up in the morning and you have something on your mind, and it has been on your mind for a number of days, and you can't get rid of it. Whatever comes up in prayer for you, if that is so overwhelming to you and you won't let it go, will be in service to that aim. And if that aim isn't God, then where it takes you will be in the direction of that, and it may be something material. So it may be something resentful, and those are different spirits as well. But you don't want to serve those spirits, because those spirits don't take you to somewhere that's, like you said, beautiful and kind and good. So you want to be very careful that not just in the morning but throughout the day, that you're serving your highest purpose. And it will guide you in places you never would have found yourself before. And also, it'll be more difficult, because as soon as, for some reason, as soon as you start to follow God's will, He puts challenges in your way. And He says, what about this? And then what about this? And then after that, it's what about this? And so you just answer to His call, and you become very busy. So it's not boring. It's anything but boring. And so if your life isn't giving you the challenges that you're looking for, if you just stop and listen and look around and then see what has to happen next, and ask for courage and strength to do it, because it isn't always something you want to do. In fact, most of the time it isn't. You'll go somewhere that you never expected, and you'll do good.
That sounds such simple and often overlooked advice. Is weave the first thing in the part of your day is prayer, because it orients the rest of what you do. I remember something that St. John Vianney said, fight really hard for the first moment of your day to pray, because the devil's fighting for it as well. And if he gets the first moment, he's most likely to get the rest. That's more or less, I think, of what he said. And how important that is, if you look back at your day or your fears, your anxieties, and it comes back sometimes with a simple question: have I at all prayed about it? And it's like, no, I haven't. And things might not immediately go away, but it does, it reorients us and or even our will. So I think you're just spot on with that. And with our Blessed Mother, I remember once again with the world's first love, she talking about the greatest compliment for Mary wasn't the fact that she was Jesus's mother, because like he said, when the woman said, "Oh, blessed are the breasts who nursed you," and which was the honor of for all women and mothers, he says, but it was the next line, "But blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it." He says she did God's will, and the closer you draw to Mary, naturally she's going to mother you to know God's will and give you the graces to do it. So it's very simple how everything boomerangs back to that beginning. Because a lot of my questions to you are very practical too. Like, well, what is your advice to those who are struggling with fear and anxiety in a world where it seems like there's no future, and like every other week there's like, are there going to be bank failures? You can go through realistic scenarios, and it gets very depressing on a human level. But I think those are all things that God is using us to once again draw us back, and He's drawing us back to our mother. Like, she's right there in all of these things, like Sheen said. You mentioned men come to you. What's the most common thing that they present to you? That I'm interested to know this.
Well, mostly they have gratitude.
Okay.
Mostly they have gratitude because I stand up with my husband. And, when I first started speaking, Michaela, my daughter, was speaking. She was opening for Jordan. And then she had to go back and take care of her baby. So she told Jordan it was a nice experience, but she had to go home. And so then he looked at me and he said, "Do you want to do it?" And of course, because I had said to God I would speak publicly, I said yes. But it wasn't a plan that Jordan and I hatched to try to have a certain end. It was the next right thing. It was the next right thing. So it was meant to be, by the looks of it. And we found in the next months ahead, usually during the meet and greet. So afterwards, Jordan gets up and has a picture taken with a small group of people for about 45 minutes and answers their questions. And they would come up and say, I really liked seeing you and Tammy on stage together, because it was a small moment of seeing a couple and how they relate to one another. Because I will sit down after the lecture in a chair opposite Jordan, and I'll ask questions from the audience. And I choose the questions, and Jordan doesn't know what the questions are. He doesn't tell me what to write to choose, and I don't tell him what they are before I get there. And so I just ask the questions I try to choose a question about children, a question about marriage, a question about the vicinity of where we are speaking, a question about gender, a question about any kind of ideology that's happening. So I'll touch on, in a question, and a religious question. And we only get through 2 or 3 questions because Jordan answers them for such a long time. But I choose kind of a variety of questions that I think might serve the people the best. And afterwards, what they say is, "Oh, I really like to see how you spoke to one another." And, I'll sometimes make a joke with him, or just like as if we're just together in the living room and we're talking. So I'm not afraid of being on stage, it turns out, and I want to be as true to myself and to Jordan as I can be when I'm up there. So I try not to put on airs of any kind. It is a relationship between him and I, and we're trying to relate to one another so that he can answer the question. People really enjoy that, and so I think men, they watch that, because there's usually a large percentage of the audience is men, and they watch that and they see that this can happen. This can happen. A man and a woman can be together for, we've been married 35 years. We've known each other for over 50 years. A man can be, even at this level of accomplishment, his wife can come and be beside him, and she can be of service there, and they can have a relationship even there on that platform. So it's not something that they necessarily think, well, that's not possible for me. Yes, it is. It's possible if you work together. If you work together, if you believe in each other, if you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Like when you get married, if you stay together through sickness and in health, you can really find a deep relationship with one another, and then together you can serve the world. You can serve your community, you can serve your nation, you can serve whatever amount that you can handle. You can go as far afield from your home as you and your wife can muster, but you have to start at home. That all starts at home. And if you don't make that bedrock of commitment at the beginning between a man and a woman, and the fruit of that relationship to have children, all of that has to happen, really, to really have the ideal relationship prosper. There's got to be room for, that you're not going to be perfect at it. None of us are perfect at it, and we all fail to some extent, but it's very important that we do our best to try and to put ourselves out there. And you just ask for courage and strength, and you'll get it if you believe. It comes with the territory. You ask for courage and strength, and then you can do. If you're trying to follow in the footsteps of what is true, then there's nothing. Well, there's a big adventure there, and there's nothing better to do.
Awesome.
And men, I think, listen to that. They
Yeah.
listen. They listen to that.
Yeah, we're pretty perceptive in those, especially those kind of environments. But we're also very quiet. So it's interesting. As we get near the end of our time here, I always get asked questions after a podcast, especially with a guest like you, is who has a lot to offer. You're thoughtful, you're reflective, you're prayerful. Is, well, what advice would she give on this, and this? You can't cover all those things, but I am interested to see if you have some short answers, though, for, like, for example, when you go and talk, no matter where you are, no matter what the questions are, there's usually something that we have that's, gosh, I wish everyone would just at least know this. For me, wherever I go, I always want to make sure I talk about the importance of a daily holy hour. Something I do, I learned from Sheen, it inspires me, and I know how powerful it is. Others is something else. And I don't put you on the spot, but what would you want to say to communicate to those marriages that are struggling? If there's one thing that right now they could begin to work on that will make it'll begin to make a massive difference for them.
Well, I think it's the beginning of the day and the end of the day. The beginning of the day to, there's always gratitude. So in the beginning of the day, first gratitude, and then service. What can I do today? And not that you have a list, but that you look around and see what's necessary. So maybe you start that. Maybe your day starts at home, and maybe your day starts at the workplace. I don't know, but wherever your day starts, to look around and see what is calling, and to answer to that. And at the end of the day, to review your day and to see if there's anything or anyone that you didn't end on the right note. So it wasn't complete, or it was a misunderstanding or something. The best thing to do is to solve that, to reach out and speak to whoever that person is, and make sure that it's not too late, but to call them and speak with them and offer what it is that you think that where you may have missed, offer that up as reconciliation in every respect, and to do that before you go to bed. And I think fewer people would have insomnia if they did that, if they got whatever was on their chest off their chest and made it right with their fellow man, and didn't hold those things in their hearts, because I don't think that's healthy. I think that we have to share with another human being, and always offering, even if you know that the other person is 99% wrong. If you're 1%, there's 1% of something you can think of that you may have done to cause this trouble, offer it. It won't hurt. Offer it, and be in that, and that's service, right? So that's service. So I think those first two commandments that you pray to God and offer service to your fellow man every day. That'll get you, that'll get you started, and it will serve you well, even just to begin your day and end your day that way every day.
Mm-hmm. Is there something that you and Jordan do that is always reorients your marriage more than anything else? Like on a
Well,
basis, daily basis, or sometimes people say, "Hey,
we
date night, no
we
matter what." Like that's the difference, and sometimes it is, and maybe that's it. I don't know, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
well we so Jordan and I, we always come together at some part of the day. At some part of the day, and then we make a plan. We make a plan of when we want to meet the next time. And so I think probably just about every time we meet, we meet, but we plan when the next time will be that we meet. So we don't kind of leave that up in the air too long before, because if you don't relate to your husband or your wife quite a bit, George thought something 90 minutes a week, and that's probably pretty good. Some weeks it's going to be more necessary than others, but if it's a practice of meeting, of recognizing that your relationship that won't just go on no effort. There has to be effort put into it, and that effort is mostly listening. So to listen to one another, I guess 45 minutes each a week is necessary to address any kind of misunderstandings that might be brewing. And then you might have time to actually connect. And it's funny because when Jordan and I have a date, and we've had a practice of having dates since our first baby was born, and we continue to do that regularly. And that means, what did that mean in the beginning? It meant no phone calls, no answering the door, no distractions, just him and I being together, no matter what we were doing. If we decided we were going to watch a movie together, or we were going to get dressed in something nice and dance, it didn't matter what we were going to do. Go for a walk, doesn't matter. It's time that we've decided to be together, and so we would decide that, but not on that day. It would usually be decided for the next day, and that means that you have time that next day to prepare. And so so you can't say I'm too tired, because you had a chance to have a rest. You can't. There's no real excuses unless something absolutely out of the blue comes up to say that you don't have time. So we negotiate quite a bit. We negotiate all the time, and so then here we're together, and we have to be together in the right spirit. We have to be together in the spirit of humility and of sharing. I guess that's service. So humility and service were together in that spirit. And with practice over time, that becomes a sacred place that you have nurtured. And I think that when Jordan and I were very, very sick and hadn't seen each other for at least 2 years, I don't know how long we didn't see one another, but it was quite a long time. And when he came home and he was still very sick, I was quite a bit better by the time he got home. And we found ourselves in the same house one evening. And we thought, well, what should we do? I guess we should have a date. And we thought, really? We were practically dead, both of us. Can we actually have a date, or is the spirit even there anymore? But we had practiced this for so many years that I knew what to do, and so did he. We didn't have to talk about it. He went and, fluffed the pillows and turned the music on. And I went and had a shower and put something nice on, and we danced. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it that we could dance, that we did dance, and that the spirit of love and commitment was there. It was beautiful. And I thought, oh my goodness, that practice of dating that we have done, sometimes begrudgingly, and often, he'd ask me for this date, and I wouldn't want to have a date. But by the time I had showered and put on something nice and everything, I was, kind of halfway there. So by the time we'd go to dance, I was, not completely against it. And then, but you're getting, you want to be in the right spirit. So, and I think that the preparation, the ritual of being together and getting ready helps you to get into the spirit. But then if we hadn't talked for 90 minutes that week, or maybe it'd been a few weeks we hadn't, before we could actually dance, I'd have to ask him all these questions about, the kitchen sink isn't working right. Oh yeah, I know the kitchen. And at first he used to think, oh, no date tonight. That's what, Tammy scuttled the date again. But he's learned over the years to recognize that these questions that I'm asking are part of the work that goes into having a good relationship. And so he's on board. He knows it's part of the game that we're playing in good faith, and that sometimes now he even brings something. Sometimes now he'll even bring something that's on his mind that he needs to get, and it may not have anything to do with him or I, but it's something that's on his mind. We talk about it for like 10 minutes. It doesn't take very long. And then we can have a date, and then we can dance. And so this whole being married it's constant negotiation. It's constant listening. It's not constant, but it's weekly. It's not necessarily even daily, but at least weekly, of listening and with the right spirit of really understanding and maybe bringing a new way to think about something. Because, when you come together with 2 or 3 people in the spirit of God, God is there. So it probably is going to bring something that's worthwhile to your relationship. And it's necessary. It's necessary to stay together, and we're supposed to be in service to one another. So you can't say all the time that you don't feel like it. That won't work. It's a necessary part of marriage.
Well, that's got me definitely thinking because, the demonic, what characterizes the demonic more than anything else is splitting up, division, and you feel it. Everyone feels it. Every marriage feels that. And you have to really work hard, like both spouses, but I'll speak for the men, but we have to really work hard to be intentional and to do it for the sake of it. Like love is a choice. Always remind it, love is a choice. It's not an emotion. But once you make that choice, the graces do come in, but everything I find in our home, and this is everyone, almost everyone I talk to, if not everyone, the spouses, and is that they just feel this spirit of tension and division, and they don't understand it because they pray, they do all these things, but that's what it's every moment, and that's the times in which we live where evil is really just the demonic is loose, as Sheen would say, and the fight for that, and it's something as simple as this really does make a big difference. We notice it as well. So just you saying that was a great affirmation and reaffirmation of the importance. I like the scheduling part because sometimes it doesn't always, well, often I'm the opposite. She'll be like giving me hints, date night, this and this. I'm like, oh, sure. And it doesn't happen. Or the devil comes in and I don't know. Sometimes like I dismantled it before it even started. So anyway, communication, the word, it's interesting. Christ is the word. And the demon wants to cut that off, that word from reaching spouse to spouse, because then it's life-giving. So thanks, Tammy. My goodness, I have a lot of things, but and I'd like to ask, but I just want to give you the final word to our audience of what you'd like to leave them with more than anything, because I'm thinking of women and men who are hurting. I'm thinking of my daughter. She's a single mother, and they're looking for hope, and they understand their faith, but that doesn't knowledge doesn't heal a wound. There's something more. And anyway, so a word of hope to our audience. Whatever the Spirit leads you on that. And
Well, when I was told that I only had 10 months to live, and I went home to tell my son that I only had 10 months to live, when I looked at him and I saw a boy who was going to lose his mother, and the grief in his eyes, and realized that I was worthwhile fighting for, that's when I felt, my cynicism and my doubt leave my body, and the Holy Spirit fill my body. And I knew that only God knew when I was going to die, and that we would face this with as much acceptance as we could along the way, and just see how it would go. And I think that acceptance, that it was a grace. I was given the grace that day to have a chance to be there for the people that I love in everything I do, myself included. So all those things I told you at the beginning that I'm better at now, those were all for me, those gifts. To be more loving and all of those things. Those are wonderful things to feel myself, but to also give those things to the people that I love and to be there for them. However it manifests, just to be there for them, and to know that there's joy in that. There's joy in serving your fellow man, trying to make things, not trying, but allowing things to get better, not getting in the way. Just stop getting in the way. We have to stop getting in the way of God's plan. We have to stop getting in the way, and to see what the possibilities are for our lives, because I think often we get in our way and then we find trouble mounts.
all right. I'd like to end this conversation. Thank you so much for your time and your very generous time. And it looks like a beautiful day where you are. And bring it back to our Blessed Mother. I'd like to say end with a Hail Mary, but with these words of Fulton Sheen first, because this is something we can all do. beginning with ourselves. But if we're looking for a mission, here's one right here. This is Fulton Sheen, and really talking about Mary is the answer. If we want peace in this world, peace in our marriages, peace in our homes, he says, the world will never be converted to the Heavenly Father until first it sees Christ living again in his mystical body, his church. And the church will never be able to bring Christ to the world until it brings Mary to the world. He says, the world is always in danger of losing Christ because it is afraid of Mary. If the world really knew the woman, it would not fear the man. So let us turn to our Blessed Mother and allow her, as the undoer of knots, one of her titles, to see, she sees them all. And she has been given the power by our Lord to undo them. So let's pray for whatever we need for most in our lives. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Amen.
Mary, Queen of Peace, pray for us. All right. Thank you, Tammy. What a joy.
Thank you. Thank
to
you,
see
Peter.
your smile and all your wisdom. So God bless you, Jordan, your family, and all that you have on the horizon. So let's keep each other in prayer. You're always welcome to join our rosary every weekday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, Fulton Sheen Institute YouTube channel. We pray with people all around the world. So you're always welcome.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you. Take care.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Right is right if nobody is right. Wrong is wrong if everybody is wrong. And believe me, in this error-infested world, what we really need is a church and an authority that is right not when the world is right, but one that is right when the world is wrong.
Never in history has the prayer of the Rosary been more needed to save our families, our countries, and defeat the evils of the world than now. The Fulton Sheen Institute worked closely with the Roman Rosary to develop the most unique, beautiful, and meaningful rosary that was inspired by Fulton Sheen's World Mission Rosary. This special handcrafted rosary continues Sheen's passion to support the mission of the Church to evangelize the entire world. Each decade of the rosary has a different color, which corresponds with a different continent. Yellow for Asia, red for the Americas, white for Europe, blue for the nations of Oceania, and green for Africa. Each Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary comes with a set of 4 pure essential oil blends that have been chosen for their therapeutic and theological significance. These blends correspond to the 4 mysteries of the Rosary. Simply choose the oil for the mystery of the day, drop a small drop in the palm of your hand, and massage the oil over the surface, being sure to catch the lava beads. You're good to go, and your prayer will linger longer with these beautiful aromatic notes. Every Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary you purchase supports our mission to fight the battle for the hearts and souls of the Christian family and lead our world back to God. So visit the Fulton Sheen Institute's store and pick up your beautiful Fulton Sheen Aroma Rosary today. Get one for you, your family members, and your close friends, and don't forget your pastor. Thank you so much for your prayers and your support.